Hello and welcome to another episode of the American Soccer Analysis Show. We're back and it's the off season, which means we have another guest and Harrison's back. It's all dubs. Today, Ben and Harrison, we're joined by Arman Kafai, formerly head data consultant at FC Dallas, now writing a little bit of back yield. Word on the grapevine is he might be writing a little bit at ASA coming up in your ears. Arman, what's going on, man?
Nothing much, man. I'm super glad to finally be. I've talked to a bunch of Harrison. I feel like I've talked to you forever, dude. Like I called you back when I was in college to talk
Yeah,
about advice and stuff like that, and to actually finally like be on a pod like this, like I'm honored. Like this is awesome.
brother, like we're even like decked out the same. Like we have like the hoodie, the white hoodies and stuff, the clear glasses.
We got everything. The facial
Dude,
hair, kind of.
yeah, the facial hair even
You
go, yeah.
wish. You
Ben,
wish
you
you
need
had
some, bro.
Harrison's
Ben, you need
beard.
some.
No, that's a lost cause.
Ben
That's not
Ben's
happening.
gonna come back next week with clear frames and a beard. Little do we know. Uh, so I think it's actually funny you say the like you spoke to Harrison in college because I feel like everybody in the American like soccer analytics space has a weird story of like they were in college, they did some math or something, and they saw ASA and they were like, "Oh, I'm gonna like reach out to these guys. They probably won't answer." And then all of a sudden you've had a 3 hour conversation and they've given you like all of their time. Like this was me with Elliot in like 2018 probably. So I get it. I get it. But I don't know your backstory. I don't know how you ended up at Dallas. I don't know. Maybe you did like politics in college. Armand, what was your like background before you started Dallas?
So my background's weird. Like it's very weird to think about it because I actually did journalism in high school. So I was a journalist in high school. I wrote like I enjoyed it, and I was like, but my goal was to always work somehow in sport, right? That was like kind of my goal, whatever. So at UT Dallas, the school I went to, I studied economics, and I was like, and I really liked it. It was super fun, but I still did journalism on the side. So I actually was doing stuff for, I don't know if you guys remember Pro Soccer USA, like way back when before it died, RIP. But I was doing stuff for them, and I was sorry, Harrison, that was hilarious. And I was there's no video
Harrison,
component on the Spotify, so people were like, "What the hell are
this
you guys
is
laughing
an
about?"
audio only medium, but Harrison did kissed his fist, tapped it to his heart, and then pointed at heaven. Sorry, continue.
No, it's good. So I would go to training like in between classes. So I'd drive up to Frisco, go up to training, watch training, interview. I guess it was Oscar at the time, and then Lucci, because I did it from like 2017 to like 2019 until I graduated with my undergrad. And like there's literally a video of me on YouTube asking Lucci Gonzalez, "Hey, why do you love Rondo so much?" I can pull it up and send it to you guys. But that's like the type of stuff that I was doing, and it established a really good relationship with Lucci and I. And obviously, I was getting my master's in economics. I like take a fast track program to kind of do that. Lucci knew that, and we had a really good relationship. So quite literally, I went to go say, "Hey, Lucci, I'm not doing this anymore. I really want to thank you for your time that you gave to me when I would interview. We'd talk all the time off the record, like just BSing basically." And he came back and was like, "Hey, like, how'd you feel about getting an internship? We don't have data here. We legit don't understand like how data works at all. Like when it comes to XG, we don't understand how any of this works. Can you help us like understand bits and pieces of this stuff?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So that kind of started my journey there. And then from there, I stayed with Lucci until obviously he was let go in 2021. And then Nico came along and he heard that there was a data guy. I was still contracted with the club on a part-time basis. And Nico was like, "Hey, like, I like the work you've done." And Nico, I mean, not to go off him, Nico knows a lot about data because he worked with Berhalter quite a bit. And Berhalter is like very big into data from my understanding. And he passed that on to Nico. And from there, I mean, I stayed with the team until I departed in the end of the 23 season. So that's kind of my background. It's kind of weird, but
You know what? It's I think people like severely underestimate even coaches who are not super amenable to data when they like find someone they click with and it's like, okay, I trust this person. It's like a huge in. Like I think I've told this story on the pod before, but I did a lot of stuff with coaches back home in Ontario, guys who are like Brexit means Brexit, guys. Like
Hmm.
4-4-2, we kick the ball as far as we can. And you can kind of like once they trust you, you're like, hey, like you should take a look at this. And now like I don't live there anymore and they don't have a new data guy. And these people are recording XG for their own games for leagues that don't have data providers now. And it's just like when you get that close relationship is huge. Ben, I'm curious because you had like a similarly circuitous journey into your full-time job with the Rapids. Was it like similar where it was like a part-time to a full-time thing like that?
So it was never full time for me, but it's actually funny. Like when I was in grad school, I had actually applied to the job that Matt applied for and got. So this was like
Ah.
in the middle of everything. Resume doesn't look like anything yet. Like
For those
very
for
much
those
makes
not
sense.
aware, Matt Pfeffer, who we spoke to on
Hmm.
last week's episode, who's now the director of analytics, I think is his title at Cronky Sports Entertainment.
Hmm.
Sorry, just giving the backstory there.
Yeah, no, totally for the listeners there. So that had happened, and then like a couple years down the line, they were trying to bring people on, and they actually he Matt DM'd the ASA Twitter account, which Drew then put in the Slack like, "Hey, anyone want to reach out about this?" And I'm like, "Yes," because at that point I had exited grad school and exited academia, and finally had like a lid on my head after all of that stuff. So I'm like, okay, I'll talk to them. And so we hashed out the part-time year-long contract idea from there. So yeah,
Cool.
it's very much like relationships. I mean, mine wasn't dealing with any of the coaches. Like I was dealing with Matt and on occasion talking with France. So it was already data people driving that
Mm,
stuff. So
But I mean,
okay.
you look at Matt's story last week and his journey, and you look at even all the stories that we accumulate and that we've talked to. I feel like no one has a linear path. Like there isn't a linear path right now that it's established. And so you have these
hmm.
people that have biology backgrounds. You know, you have these people that have these weird uh, journalist majors like yourself that just have like these weird, you know, stories of, hey, I did this and someone asked me about it and I had a little bit of knowledge and I learned more. And I think that that's one of the most beautiful things about where we're at. And it's one of those things that it does make me a little bit sad as we do continue to grow in the sport with this being a key cog within the decision making process, we lose some of those stories. And it does make me a little bit sad and it does make me a little bit more sentimental because I feel like we have this our era, I will say our era of data analytics in soccer has just kind of they just kind of put their foot in and I think it's really interesting. I would have loved to kind of pick apart you guys talked about, you know, some of the stuff that you Ben, you called it a journey of what data analytics looks like across over the course of time and how you develop it, right? I think it's really interesting to see how teams are processing. And Armand, I'm kind of curious, what did that look like at the end of 2023 when you left versus when you first got there and you started establishing certain practices? I'm sure I don't want to say it was night and day, but I imagine it was different, right?
It was 100% different, Harrison. And I mean, one thing that's for sure is you walk into a guy, and I give Nico Estevez a lot of credit, and I think Austin FC fans are gonna love hearing like this kind of stuff. He walked in, we had a meeting, a one-on-one meeting, and he walked in, he goes, just starts talking about tracking data. Do we have access to tracking data? Do we have access to all these things? And I'm like, well, yes, because of the second spectrum deal. So the second spectrum deal came in and that allowed us to have the tracking data. And Nico was all about that stuff. Nico buys that stuff all the time. Like he's big into it. And he provided because Lucci was eager to learn, right? Lucci was super eager to learn and he learned a lot through Berhalter, right? Like I like Berhalter, like again, not to make him sound like his godfather or anything, but he teaches a lot when it comes to these analytics and stuff. And uh, for that time with Nico, understanding his mannerisms, understanding what he wanted to see, etc. I mean, Harrison, you're spot on. It was night and day. I could literally show you my reports and what I had when I first started to the end, and you'd be like, "Holy cow, this is just completely different." And it's just kind of the evolution of these things. And Harrison, I want to touch upon something you said about kind of putting your foot in the door like on your own and stuff like that. I think one thing that, like not to get like all give advice to people and stuff, but I'd love to like is the concept of you have to understand who you're working with, right? Like you can't just walk into something and be like, "Hey, I know everything. It's whatever." Like you might know the most about analytics of the club. You might do, but you cannot act like it. You can't go about it in that manner. You must respect everyone. Like someone might come to you with maybe a question that you think is silly or something. You got to work with them and say, "Hey, no, I understand what you're saying," and break them through that process. And I think that's a very beautiful thing with the relationships that you're talking about and earning that trust. Because I mean, regardless of what happens in the data in the eras and stuff like that, you're gonna have to earn that trust regardless of who you're working with. And I think sometimes that kind of gets overlooked. Like we kind of care about how beautiful graphics are, we care about how like this like analysis is, etc. I think a great thing that like ASA does as a whole is they break it down for people regardless of their backgrounds, and it makes sense to people and stuff like that. But sometimes, like, all people like, well, someone asked me when they were an intern at Dallas, "Hey, what can I do to get better? Should I learn Python? Should I learn this? Should I learn that?" I'm like, brother, learn how to explain the concepts. Learn how to explain the concepts. Don't get too ahead of yourself. It doesn't matter if it's drawn on some Excel graph or anything like that. If you can't explain it, the coach is gonna grab it and throw it in the trash.
It's so funny you say that because somebody I think about a lot in so for reference at ASI, the conference that's going on in Houston next weekend, Brian and Tyler from ASA are giving a talk about ASA. And I think this is going to come up before then. So if you're going, you should go check that out. But they're kind of like petitioning the ASA Slack for like things to talk about, and I won't spoil anything. But somebody who came up in my mind was Teodal Football, who like Teodal is like no one is going to accuse him of having the prettiest graphics. That guy has Excel spreadsheets that would make God weep, and they're horrifically ugly. But what he is tremendous at is like distilling down the takeaway of this Excel sheet that makes his laptop fan whir and distilling it down to like the key takeaway. And it's such a valuable skill where like I agree with you. The number one thing when kids ask me about stuff or like or because now there's like so many college kids who like it's a real career you can get. It's like if you can talk about what you're doing to the coaches and to the soccer people and like make that a thing, it's the single most useful skill. So it's funny, it's not funny, but it's always interesting to hear people come in. You came in from the relationship with Lucci from the reporting side and from Oscar previously, and not from the analytics side. Like you came in through the coaches and not through like, oh, we want to hire an analytics person. You know what I mean? It's always interesting to hear that.
No, Kieran, you're 100%. I mean, exactly. Like coming in from that side, it's all about trust, right? Like, I just, I feel like, especially because kids are coming in, like, we want to learn this, we want to learn this. You can, like, we want to get all these, like, beautiful graphs and stuff. We want to get these statistical methods, and you need to know those things, right? You have, like, that makes your message easier to explain. But the trust level, like, that's something that you, like, especially because I think my situation was very unique because I worked very closely with the coaching staff, very closely with the coaching staff. And with that, you understand certain things. You sometimes get questions. Like I'll give you an example of a question I got. It's like, why don't like players have different XGs? And like the argument that the coach had was, hey, like this like player A, like it's player A and Messi, for example, a penalty from player A versus Messi. He's like, why they have the same thing? And you have to go through and answer these questions. And again, like to us, it might be like, okay, like whatever. But that's a huge step in building the trust to where when you do have an insight, they're like, okay, that makes sense. I agree with what you're saying.
I mean,
So
it's
I'm
soft skills, right? It's the necessary need for engineers and for programmers to have those soft skills, right? It's like that the Office Space joke, where well, why can't the programmers take it down there? You know, I'm a people person, damn it! Like it's the same idea, right? You got to be a people person. You got to be able to have that rapport with people and grow with people.
So I'm curious because like that's something in my day job outside of soccer, like in government, like what are supervisors or case managers or this what what are these people looking for in their data? It's hard for me to get into their head. So is there a moment that you can think of like maybe a someone in the front office or coaching staff or a player asking you a question where you're like, oh, I didn't realize that's something people like they were even interested in. Like that pushed me to create something new that I hadn't thought before. Like look at something from a new angle.
Oof, there's like there's a lot of metrics, and again, like Harrison, I want you to do the same action you did for the RIP Pro Soccer USA for Second Spectrum, because I mean the data there, man, I cannot go on and on about how amazing that thing was, because man, that made our lives so much easier as a whole. The one thing that was very awesome at Second Spectrum, this is a very small thing, Ben, maybe it's not like a statistical thing by any means, but it was just the ability, and I know we're explaining this, and I know some people who worked with Second Spectrum are gonna hear this, but for those who didn't work with it, man, I'm making it seem like it's like a memorial for this thing, but it was like legitimately like amazing. Like I can't like, and the NBA uses it, and like I totally get why and everything, but there's a small thing, Ben, where we were attaching our stats with just the data from Second Spectrum. So like, or the video, excuse me, from Second Spectrum. So like through Second Spectrum, for the context for those who haven't used it, you're able to kind of like use almost SQL functions to select like, hey, I want to play with 5 passes that was like, or a possession with 5 passes that one of them was like Alan Velasco or something like that. I don't know, I'm just making up names or something. And it would pull the exact clip of that. And that small thing was able to kind of like, we could put that in the reports, we could analyze those things. And that small thing, again, was one of those things where I was like, this is such a small thing, but the coaches would go through it. It would aid them in their film. It would aid
It,
them in everything.
it really surprises me that you talk about RIP, but I mean seriously, I feel like even in ASA we groaned like audibly, like everybody was really bummed out when we found out that they weren't
League
renewing.
wide too. I'm
You're
sure
like,
you guys have heard this too. League wide, people
yes,
were
oh yeah,
very bummed about the news, and like obviously STS has come in and they're doing their thing, but Second Spectrum, like it was just like such an like
the
again
platform was there,
the
it was integrated, and it was beautiful.
exactly.
Yeah, it made
And
it
Ben
very
and
very
like
user friendly.
and Ben, like, especially because, like, to clarify, I was part-time the entire time. Like, I was a consultant the entire time. For me, I don't have all this time in the world to go and go through all these things together. Like, I could, but I work 40 hours doing something else. You do the same thing.
Mm,
Like, we all do the same thing, right? Like,
good stuff.
that's like it's so hard to go through and do all those things. And what it did was it allowed so much like think there was so many insights I found through it. I was going through my old reports because someone had asked me a question, and I was like, holy cow, like the differences were night and day, like just immense. So, Ben, that was a small thing, man. It was just like, again, it wasn't like an insight or anything, to be honest, but it was just attaching that stuff to the point where when we lost the MLS lost the deal,
Hmm. Hmm.
coaches were like, hey, what happened to the clips? What, like, are we gonna get that? And the answer was no, because I can't go through and clip everything. Like,
Hmm.
I'm not a video analyst. I'm not good at that. Video analysts
Hmm.
Even if you were, the amount of time saving, like you talk to any analyst and like the time savings was
it was
ridiculous.
incredible, man. It was
But it's cool because I think it's like you're saying, it was training the coaches to think about the game a different way. It's like like think about soccer programmatically. It's like understanding what are the patterns we're looking for, it
exactly.
actualizes what we care about and
And
translates that directly into the concrete game footage that they then want to recreate in future games.
And Ben, exactly what you're saying, man, because also gave them an idea of, okay, what like for example, like we can say a shot has an XG value of 0.5. What does that mean? What does that look like? You know, what does that look like? And that was the gap that built trust. Again, that's a whole thing about building trust, right? Like again, like sometimes with some of these data providers, you see some numbers and you're like, how can I trust this data? And that's the coaches saying that. Like I like there was a point where like we had like was one provider at one point where we were like
I know
this
exactly what story you're
yeah
thinking of right
and
now.
we were like and they were also like so I lost the trust for that data provider. I couldn't get that back. So it's just like Ben, you like hit the nail on the head. Like that's exactly. I hope I said that cool, right? Because I tried to use it today and I completely butchered it. So, it's one of those things to where it's like the coaches were then like, okay, this makes sense. Like this makes a lot of sense. Okay, I understand what you're going with. Oh, hey Armand, why was this not included in this play set? I don't know, like someone's second spectrum. Let me go and analyze like what their definitions are, and I can kind of figure out what's going on with it, etc. That's how you build trust with these things. And I mean, again, like not to reminiscent too much about second spectrum, but like it was such a great tool that allowed us to build the trust that I know I just I bet you it's a little bit harder for clubs now to like establish that trust that those things with other providers and not being able to link video as closely as well because quite literally like again for the viewers or listeners excuse me that haven't used it you could just click like I could provide the link you could click and it'd go straight to a playlist that had everything in there.
No, it's crazy. Like it's what the single most useful tool I've ever built for a coach was like a Tableau dashboard for XG shot maps, and you could click the bubbles, and it would take you to a Google Drive video clip.
Exactly.
And this is when I was like teaching XG to these coaches who'd like never really heard of it before, and so you would show them, and they'd be like, "Oh my God, this is like amazing," because they're like, "Oh my God, yeah, that is totally an amazing chance. That's great that that's a point 0.6 because it's a breakaway and the keeper's on the ground or whatever." And that was like very, very simple models and extremely rudimentary to put it into a Google Drive, but it was like what 2018 Kieran could do. And it was very, very valuable. I want to flip this a different direction because I think one of the things that uh, I talk about this a lot with like young players who are like not good enough to play anymore, right? Like the age group that I mostly used to coach was like U17 to U21s, guys who are going to college or they're playing in college and like they love soccer, but they're going to be 23 and they will have nowhere to play that they don't have to pay to play anymore. And maybe they have a kin degree or they have a business degree and they're like, how do I like stay around the game? And or like I feel like I remember specifically one kid being like, I feel like I wasted all this time playing soccer for all these years and I have nothing to show for it. And the point I made to him was like, hey, it's extremely valuable to have like sports experience in the regular workplace as a person. So I'm curious, Armand, and for you, Ben, actually, because like you went from a sports workplace to a not sports workplace. Like, what did you take the other way? What did you take from your time at Dallas to now, like whatever you do in your day job? Was it technical skills? Was it like talking to coaches or whatever? Like, where did that go?
It was funny. So when I interviewed for my role at the current company I was at, I had just got done with some like internship experience with Dallas, and within there I had learned how to again like kind of things I'm kind of talking to you guys about like talking to coaches and stuff like that, breaking down concepts that a lot of people don't understand like or that coaches don't understand, and that was the most valuable thing because again like I can draw the most beautiful graph, I can draw do the most beautiful data work. I can clean the data as much. I can make the most sophisticated SQL code. If I can't explain what it means to people, it doesn't matter. It literally could be like a completely different language to people, and it will not matter. For me, that was the most valuable thing I learned because these, like, again, coaches, they're interested. They want to learn, but sometimes it's just like, "Ah, what does this mean? Like, what does this actually mean?" And we have access to so much data. We have access to so many insights that we could have that for me, the biggest thing I learned again was just explaining these things to people. Like it's just talking to people and being like, "Hey, whatever business concept's going on, here's the situation, here's what's happening, here's the problem. This is what I like." Just being very clear and concise in those moments because some again like it's like one of like Harrison you mentioned like one of those soft skills. Like you just explaining things in like a proper like a very nice way. Like for me, it's just that was a big thing I took away. But again, my perspective different, like from Ben's, I'd probably say, because again, I worked really closely with the coaching staff. So like, I don't know, Ben, like, would you would something like that you take, or was there something else?
Well, this is interesting because I think my role is a little bit more siloed because it was all just like helping build the systems that were already in progress being built. And I didn't talk to coaches at all. I was in the FO 100% of the time. So for my take, I was only inputting the database. No one was necessarily listening to me about stuff, but I got to be around conversations about like what are scouts saying about the players. We've got the Philly. I like it's before game. It's we're watching whatever MLS game, whoever Philly's playing before Rapids kickoff. What are they saying about these players? Like, oh, what are they remembering? What kinds of stories do they have? Like that was actually my favorite. So like something that I'm familiar with. I have assumptions that I'm taking for granted, but now I have someone who spent their whole career in the game, not necessarily from a data perspective. They've played the game, they've had those aspirations, and now they're the ones like feeding that information to the decision makers now. That was such a cool experience. So like now in my work, like, okay, so you're not a data person, but you're the subject matter expert. I'm just trying to help create the systems to help you make a better decision. What do you care about and how do you see this problem? And then that helps me not only get to the answer they actually want or to a better answer than what I would have gotten to on my own, but now I know how what they care about. And so I can get their attention that way. And I can get them to care about what we both think is important for our shared goal here.
Yeah, it's very it's again, it's such a cool environment, and like the VP at the company I work at used to play for St. Mirren. Like he was an SPL guy, and like now he's a PhD chemist and whatever and all these things. But like there are so many skills you take away from it, non-technical, that are extremely valuable. Um, I didn't really intend for this conversation to be so like aspirational, like
I love
young
it.
kid
No, I
advice.
I genuinely love it because I mean, I'm sure you guys get the questions all the time. I mean, this is just us paying it forward, right? Because we've all had people in our back corner kind of being like, "Hey, this is everything that's kind of gone through," right? For me, it was a guy like Harrison. Harrison, I think I called you, like if I remember correctly, about an FC Cincinnati internship. I don't know if you remember, but like that was the thing. Like that was like that's how way back. This was when FC Cincinnati had Alan Koch.
Before that, you had
Oh, hold on,
Nashville.
hold on, hold on, hold on. It's amazing that you said this because I completely forgot about this. Alan Koch is now coaching a Canadian university team as a
Yes.
part-time coach as of today. This just
What?
got announced like an hour ago. Yeah,
That is hilarious. What
like
are
a
the
random. Sorry, it's so funny
No,
that you
that's
said that.
hilarious, man. That's awesome. Holy, that's
No, but
Sorry,
wild.
I
FC
feel like we
Cincinnati.
had a couple conversations, right, about Nashville, about FC Cincinnati, and I you know what I think it just broke so amazing. Honestly, we had such good conversations that came from it. I felt like you grew from all those different steps and all those different opportunities that absolutely built you to where you are now. But it was really cool to be able to like have that conversation and now look back and see where you're at, which I feel like yeah, you're right.
No,
You've already
that's what I'm
gone
saying.
through like years
Like
of being in a front office and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's cool.
no, it's amazing, and like I think like especially with I think ASI coming up and all these like events coming up, and everyone wants to get into soccer analytics. Like it's like or like analytics in general, right? Everyone wants to get into it. It's like everyone's dream job, you know? Like I want to work in sport. I want to do all this stuff, and I think like Kira, you said we won't make it like aspirational or anything, or like it wasn't intended to be. Sometimes it can be, it has to be because it's growing in such a rapid rate. Like things are like happening, and like just paying it forward. I think one thing that ASA is a great job. I mean, like I said, I remember seeing a conversation I had with Harrison in like 2019. You know, this is like 6 years ago and stuff like that. Like it's real, like it's real stuff. So I mean like the insights that we learn from the like from these moments I think are really important to pass on to people because uh like as weird as this sounds like the experience I went through was fantastic, it was great, but there's definitely some growing pains that I didn't know about when you go through the process like. And Ben, I mean, as someone that you were part-time, like it's not as easy as people want to make it a thing. It's a lot of long days, it's long hours for me. I would go to the stadium at like 4 or 5 p.m. and not leave till like 10 p.m., 11 p.m., stuff like that after games and stuff. And like again, like and it was doing small stuff. So like I'll give you an example of the small stuff that I would do in my first couple of years, or actually throughout my time there. I would help the video analysts record games. Like, because for us, like, again, we didn't have a robust data system because again, I was part-time. Like, I cannot build a robust data system as a part-time person. It's impossible. We could use Second Spectrum sometimes when it was around. RIP again. But like again, we couldn't build them out. So for us, our kind of philosophy was we're not gonna bog down the coaches with super big like data insights, stuff like that. So I was like, okay, how do I help? How can I also build, like, how do I help in other ways that isn't just I'm gonna be like sitting there at the game doing this? Like, I'm not above anyone else. Like, I don't think anyone is above anyone else in this thing. So it was helping those things out and stuff. Like, it's small stuff like that where people sometimes kind of overlook. And like sometimes they're like, oh, it's like all like roses and rainbows. It's like sometimes it's not, man. Sometimes you deal through tough seasons. I mean, I went through the season when Lucci got fired, and at that point, you don't know if you lose your job. You don't know if you're gonna lose your job, and you don't know if you're gonna talk. You're talking to people who aren't sure that they're gonna lose their job, and then it changes in 2 months when a new coach comes in and wants to buy in and everything. So there's a lot to it, and I just I hope like a small bit of our conversation and the conversations that are had at ASI with people. I mean, there's gonna be, I think, from my understanding, people that aren't in soccer there or that haven't worked in soccer, people that are college kids, high school kids, whatever. I hope that like, they like if they're listening to this, like talk to people, get their insight. Like don't be afraid. Like none of us like will be like will tell you go to hell or anything. We all want to talk and help. So um I mean the insight from Ben, I mean Harrison, Kieran, all you guys, like you guys are all like brilliant and you guys all help kind of like 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 led this way, like cleared this path for us to kind of get to this point. So as much as like we don't want to get aspirational, it's more like a thank you to all you guys, like to for helping people to get to this point and doing it like, and people don't understand this is a hobby for a lot of us. This isn't like it turns into a job for some of us, right? But in the end, like we all have day jobs, we all work our ass off, we all do these things, and it's tough. It's tough sometimes, and for like again, like if we can just help someone in some way, maybe get closer to their goal, I think that's all we can really hope for.
We've been how do I say this the least teasy but like most appropriate way. We have been prepping for an announcement at ASA, and uh, we've been kind of thinking about some of the words that are going to go in that announcement. One of the things we were looking at was like thinking about all the alumni, and like we've spoken about this before. Like none of us are getting rich from ASA. Like we've Darius, and I know you know, but like we're not making money here. But where we do like where the real like gold is when we go back and we're like, yeah, we've had like over 15 people have gone on to get full-time employment in soccer analytics from ASA at Champions League clubs, at MLS clubs, at NWSL clubs, running their own consultancy. And now some of those people have like significant power in the organizations they run, or they like work for a multi-club ownership or whatever it is. Like there's a lot of those people. And
Here,
I
can I
think
interrupt you for 1 second?
yeah.
People talk about fan graphs as being like the thing for baseball and stuff like that, like the pathway
Mhm.
for like a lot of those people. I mean, ASA is that for soccer in America.
No, it is. And I will absolutely brag about it every time that like if you want to get someone to see you, like if you are a college kid who is like, I think I want to do soccer analytics stuff, the number one easiest way to get your stuff read by GMs and by team presidents and by coaches is to send ASA an email and be like, hey, I worked on this cool model, or I came up with this thing. Like, can I put it on the website? And guess what? If it's not garbage, it'll go on the website because like you'll get better and learn. And
Well,
we
not only
know,
that, not only that, you're gonna have so many people look through it and comb it and give you suggestions on how to improve it before it even goes up.
yeah,
Like the
yep.
the
It's a whole
the process,
process, the whole
yeah, the
brain trust.
process to even publish it and the amount of people that are involved in that scape is Dude, it's awesome. The amount of people, new people that come through and have some ideas and stuff, and then all of a sudden start collabing. It's
Oh,
awesome.
and then there's always like spin-off ideas because people are like, "Oh, I never thought about it that way."
Well, yeah.
But it
Exactly.
is the easiest way to get people to look at your stuff. And like I don't want to be like write for free for exposure because like do whatever you want. You want to work on it, you can work on it. It's just
Absolutely.
you want to post on your Twitter, go for it. Uh
Unfortunately, that's like the reality, right? Like you have
yeah.
to like you have to do free stuff like in the soccer world. Like do I agree with it? Like no, but I worked for free. I worked for free for like as in like writing and stuff like that. My first 2 years were free. I worked with Third Degree. I wrote for free. Like I didn't write for a
Oh
dime.
yeah.
Yeah, and
I've
then
yeah.
like and then when I went to and then the PR guy at Dallas noticed me and referred me to MLS. So that's when I started getting paid for it. But it was
Mm.
2 years just showing up to the stadium and holding a mic and understanding what was going on and just kind of being in that moment, like that's and like for in the AS and with ASA's thing, it's like this is like again like I hate like free work and stuff like that. Unpaid internships, I hate it. All that good stuff. Like I absolutely hate it. But in this case, like it's on your own time. This is like, and again, like it's not like you're not being forced. Like we're not gonna like hold a gun to your head and be like, finish this. Like, no,
No.
this is on your own time. This is on your own accord. So
This
that's
just
like
show expose you a little bit at how
exactly.
little you know because Kieran absolutely has, since he's come to America, we've given him guns. So he has them and and with all the season previews about to hit,
Oh,
He's gonna put a
oh.
gun to my
Oh
head. That's what
no.
I know.
Oh
Yeah,
my
hey,
God.
Armin, your deadline is in there. You don't hit it. Be careful, man.
Yeah, you're gonna fly out to Dallas and beat my ass.
No, it's a very weird landscape because I was talking about this the other day. I don't use Twitter very much anymore unless it's to like spam during Chelsea games because like I don't want my blue sky to be like that. And a lot of times like I'll just post random graphs and stuff for Chelsea things. And the stuff that does the best on Twitter is just like random BS scatter plots. You post a scatter plot with like a somewhat cheeky headline and it bangs no matter what. But like teams don't give a shit about that at all. Like it is not a thing that people care about. It's much more about the nuance. Like here's a theory. Like here's something about soccer. It's not about the data. It's about the soccer. And here's how we use data to talk about that. And those things are really hard to get traction publicly. And I think ASA provides a useful niche for those sorts of things.
100%.
Um, we are going to move on though. As much as, and I will say, actually, I'll say it now because people don't always listen to the end. Armand, if they want to talk to you, what's like the best way to reach out? Blue Sky or Twitter? Is that kind
Blue
of the best way
Sky.
to?
I'm anti-Twitter right now.
Is it just
Blue
Arman Kafai?
just ARMANKAFAI.
There we
So
go. So
you just type in
if you want to
Armand,
reach
it'll
out,
pop up. Yep.
he will answer DMs, I promise. And so will we. If you want to talk about ASA or you have something like I got a LinkedIn DM from a guy at Columbia the other day who was like, "Hey, I wrote this cool thing. What do you think?" And I was like, "This is pretty cool. Like, if you ever write something like this and want to put it somewhere, like shoot me a message. We can do this." So, if this sounds like you, though, if you're listening to this, you already know what ASA is. So I don't really know who this is for, but I'll say it nonetheless. However, you've been going sicko mode with the transaction
Hold
stuff.
on. The Discord has been going sicko mode.
It has been. It
The
really
Discord
has
has
been.
what was it?
You're an
Brian?
enabler though.
Dude, I am definitely. What was it? Brian's thing where it was like he said when Atlanta like trades for Kalish and like gets like a crazy
Yes.
salary budget. Wow, Garth, you're a king. When Atlanta wants to smash the transfer record, just nothing. That's literally
Yeah,
the ASA Discord.
it is. And so this is a perfect place to plug the ASA Discord. If you want to support the website, we just said we don't make very much money, but you want to keep the servers on. You can pay $5 a month. There's a Discord. It is when trades happen, it is wild in there. And during games, it pops off pretty hard as well. But it's a really really fun place if you like numbers and you like MLS and NWSL. The NWSL channel is pretty active when stuff is going on as well. And sometimes Harrison has like WoW tournaments in there or something. I sometimes I see it and I don't really know what's going on and I just move along. But it is fun to see.
we
I
won
saw
by the
something
way.
about a mage tank and I was like, all right,
We won. I just throw
there you
that out.
go. All right, there you go. Harrison won. Uh, so I wanna shift this to talk about some of the ridiculous things that have been going on in the league. Um, so I guess the first place to start is like the three DPs plus three 22s versus two and four and the money. Given your public tweetery and a lot of the stuff that you've been talking about, like roster machinations, I assume you are a fan of this rule change.
Yeah, I'm a fan of anything that makes teams act like differently and not uniform, you know? Like like the thing that I was always like kind of complaining to someone about like was you know how in the NBA there's like specific roster building that kind of goes on? Like, okay, teams tank. Okay, teams are doing this. Okay, like my favorite team's the Mavericks, right? Like I watch them. They've built their team in a very weird way where it's like they've kind of mortgaged their picks in the future to build around Luca and then go after that way. Or you have teams that apparently are just really bad, like the Utah Jazz right now, who have just been like tanking for years and whatnot. For me, like the 3+3 and a 2+4 plus the money just gives teams more autonomy to do what they want, right? Like that's all we want, man. Like again, like roster building is fun, and for us to analyze it, I think it's the coolest thing. Like for us to analyze it, it's more entertaining when you have, hey, are they gonna run a 2+4 and are they gonna get more money, like more discretionary gam to build out the rest of their roster? Hey, are they going to go 3+3 because they really didn't go for it? How can they maneuver these roster mechanics, etc.? I think it's super fascinating. And I mean, to MLS's credit, they're doing a lot better job of showing these things, right? The GAM public release, that was a huge, like, that's a huge thing that
And
allowed us to like look into those things.
and you know what? What I will say, not just the GAM public release. I actually like don't know how this happened, so I can't dox anybody. But like the league was pretty good about getting that information out to people beforehand, so that when the public release came, people specifically who could like do something with that information, when the public release came, we had almost fully built the roster builder already. I say we as if I did anything in that. Part of ASA had basically fully built the roster builder and the trade machine. Like it was almost done when that came out. So that right after, it's like, oh my God, there's these cool tools, and like people in the Discord are like, oh my God, like I can go look and change my roster and see how this handles. And can I do the Paul Areola trade? Yes, no, I don't know. Is this a fleece? We're going to talk about it. Uh, so no, I think I agree with you. I think it's super cool. Uh, Ben, you and I have talked about this a lot, so we'll move along. But Harrison, we missed you last two episodes. Do you have like 2+4, 3+3 thoughts?
Two plus? No, no, I don't. Absolutely not.
You were doing
Uh,
the math. You're like 2+4 is sick.
Yeah, no, dude, like when that came out, I was super confused. I hit the Discord just to ask like some ex, and I don't remember who it was that chimed in and was like, "Hey, this is just now. This is what this is. This is what this function, and this is what allows them. It just means more choices." And because I was super confused because I was trying to figure out like what exactly changed because they didn't do a really great job of advertising how it's changing, just what it is. Like what exactly is changing within that mechanism that wasn't there that they're allowing now. I wish that they were a little bit I wish they were a little bit clearer for on that portion. But uh as far as how you do your DPs and how you do your U22s and all that stuff, like I I don't think that there's a right way to eat a Reese's, right? Like I think that that's kind of the fun thing about it right now. I think it's all about the stages of where you're at as a club, and I think you get to make that determination. Did you have a bad contract? Do you have a DP eating a bad contract? Is there a way for you not, to move it? No. Okay, well, there's some ways that we can go ahead and we can get around it. You see that right now with I think New England is kind of very interestingly moving in a similar way to where they're moving around some bad contracts, and I think it's really interesting. So I yeah, Armand just said it exactly. Like it just allows for better choice, and I don't think that there's necessarily one way that I'm specifically looking at. I do wish the Sounders would invest in some U22s, but we're not going to touch on that. So it's
Oh, we
fine.
will.
It's
No, 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 it's coming. We will. Uh, it's yeah, I think it's pretty cool. And it's I think the way you know it's good is that we've spoken to you, we've spoken to Matt Pfeffer from Colorado, we spoke to Nikos, formerly of the Whitecaps, and every single person says it's good in the same way. They say it's good because it gives you freedom of choice, it gives you many more pathways to assemble your team, and those are the things we really like to see. And it also gives you like all these different conversations that I think are interesting. And
And
Harrison, I think
Kieran,
you're
Kieran, to interrupt you, like, sorry to interrupt you, but like, that's the thing I was missing. We were missing
yeah.
these conversations. Like in the NBA, and I keep mentioning NBA because I follow it really closely, but there's discussions. How's this salary cap going to work? How is this going to work? How are we going to get this guy? How is a Karl Anthony Towns trade going to happen for the Knicks, etc.? Like, I
No,
mean, there was like
people
weird
know
scenarios.
pe
Exactly.
people know the like Toronto Raptors cap situation to the dollar.
Hmm.
Like they know
There's
There's a guy on Twitter, Mavs CBA, who literally called word for word how the Mavericks could acquire Klay Thompson. Word for word. It was they had to trade this Josh Green's contract. They had to do this to open up this space, sign him to this deal, and boom. Word for word. We were missing that in MLS. We couldn't
yeah.
talk about that stuff.
And I think and to be perfectly clear or perfectly honest, I don't think we're like quite there yet. Like you and I had a conversation about Armin about like a rule changing and them not saying anything about it around
Yep.
the Seattle deal where we were like, hey, because a couple of people were talking about it and we're like, they're going to do it this way. And we were like, I'm pretty sure that's against the rules. And then you asked around and I asked around and everybody came back and we're like, no, that changed in the summer. They just didn't say anything about it. And so I am going to give MLS their kudos, but I'm also going to say, let's see more. Like I would love, and this will never happen because it's probably a competitive disadvantage in the global transfer market, but I would love public cap sheets, not just game totals. Give me the whole sheet every year.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that opens up. I think there is like, and Ben, we didn't actually talk about this very much last week, Ben. So I'm pretty curious what you think about this because I feel you don't skew super transactionalism. But I'm very curious if there's like a niche for MLS to fill in that all the other American sports are like MLB guys are like where you gotta make sure we don't play him over 18 games to make sure we have his arbitration years played or whatever.
I will never understand how MLB rights work
Oh yeah,
ever.
ridiculous. And the NHL guys like Matt said last week, like people are arbitraging the injury
Hmm.
reserve lists to get their cap to the dollar.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
NBA, as we spoke about. But MLS, there's like a real appetite for transactionalism, but because of the like global vagaries of the transfer market, that's
Hmm.
not there. So I
No.
do wonder if MLS can like juice their engagement as a league by being like, let's open all the books and let's just be
I
like the transaction league.
I think that's possible, but I think the rules are just too complex to some degree. And I think like my so it's I think I'm glad you went through all those other leagues because in my head the ideal cap to talk about was always, our NFL before I stopped watching NFL. Like the long-suffering 49ers fan that I am, watching the Harbaugh teams come together in the like what 2012, 2013, knowing in NFL you have a hard cap. Like you have a hard floor, you have a hard ceiling, you've got to end up in the middle of it, and there's not a lot of wiggle room. What are your priorities? How do you maneuver your draft picks? Draft is obviously very different, but it's a simpler equation to figure out on the fan side than it is in any of the other leagues I can think of. And I would want MLS to go more towards that model. Like set the hard floor, set the hard ceiling. Maybe there's like a DP luxury tax still in there, but like for the rest of the cap rules, enough of the like buying down certain contracts and allowing there to be slippage from year to like that allows for flexibility, but it makes these conversations so difficult. So I think in terms of enabling more freedom of choice in terms of how teams are built, that's the easiest way to get the conversation and all of those other incentives sort of aimed in the right direction.
I think the as much as the like damn tam gam discretionary tam are fun, I do think it is like a particular brand of sicko that is maybe not a super large population. Um, and not that like every NBA fan is like diving into the salary cap or anything like that, but I do think it's much easier to explain publicly like they have this many dollars left, so they cannot trade for LeBron or whatever it is. Um, Harrison, schedule change. MLS is eventually going to get to a point where they play a fall, winter slash spring schedule and not this spring summer schedule. Like or dislike?
Like, don't care. Like, honestly, I like over the last like 15 years, this has been debated on Twitter for to death. I mean, honestly, there's pros and cons to both sides. It's not as if there's a universal truth to playing in the winter, and vice versa. It's not like playing during the summer is a great thing, especially when you look at the South. Going and playing in Houston in the summer sucks. Sorry, it does. It's a great place to play. They're amazing fans. Say Texas, like great place to go catch a game. I've gone and caught a couple of games there at Dallas FC, and you know what? It's a great place to go. It sucks to go during a day game.
So
So
I want to jump on that because I meant to ask this earlier and I'm looking at my notes and it's in there and I didn't ask it because we got all advice giving and we were being sweet in the heart instead of giving the gossip that we want. When you're at Dallas, you have such a unique environment in that like it's one of the hottest places on the planet and you play day games in the summer. Was that a thing that like you had data on for the club and for the coaches to be like, hey, we can't press. It's 121 or whatever. I don't know. I don't know my Fahrenheit's very well. It's really
121 would
hot.
be
Like, what are you
killer.
gonna
You'd
do?
be dead. Like legitimately.
That's Death Valley, man.
Yeah,
All
you'd be
right.
Kieran, you'd be dead.
You might in Nevada get
We got
121, but
115 once this summer, and it was pretty bad.
I think I
So
I've
think
I've played soccer in 120 degrees in Africa.
you're
oh my
Okay, so
God.
you
oh my
guys,
god.
you
Oh my
don't die.
God.
You just have to drink a lot and a lot and a lot and a lot of water, and have to have regular breaks. It's not
But
practical on a professional level,
no.
but
But so was that a thing like that you guys talked about, like
the
showing
coaching
like
staff was definitely aware of it, 100%. Like you would see it too, like with the way like we'd play in those moments as well. Like it's impossible to play in like Harrison, like again, like you like you said it perfectly. It's impossible to keep us sustain. I think Nikos in the pod said that like the Texas teams can't press because yeah, you'd be exhausted by the end of it. And for us, it was very clear like that was the situation. Like and Nico knew that I think from the get-go, to be honest with you. Like it was pretty clear, it was pretty obvious, like especially with having to train at certain times too, right? Because you can't train like in the afternoon or anything. You have to train either early in the morning or at night. Like
every single MLS team trains at 10 o'clock in the morning except for the Texas
you
team.
can't. You legitimately can't because it's a risk for like cramping, exhaustion. I can go on and on. And just kind of touch on Harrison's thing, like even as a fan, right? Like or as someone who goes to the games, like you like I went to a Dallas game for the first time this past season, not being a part of the staff for like 6, 7 years, right? Like or being in the press box, something with AC, right? I sat in the game. The game was at 7:30 kickoff. I was dripping in sweat, but I was dripping in sweat after sitting in the thing for 15 minutes. It was a miserable experience. Miserable. And I like not to like over exaggerate it like cuz obviously cold sucks too and whatever, but legitimately I was dripping in sweat and I was like, "Holy crap, this sucks." Like this is not a fun experience, especially in Dallas where they don't have the I was even on the roof side and I was just dripping in sweat, just dripping in sweat. Like this sucks. This is a whole like this is not fun. Like fans would move like to like under the things like for like 10, 15 minutes. The sun would go down, then you'd go down. Like that's how it works. It's extremely hot. But yes, Kieran, to your question, yes, it was definitely a thing that the coaches were 100% aware about, and we were all kind of aware about. Where we're like, hey, like we can't do this.
well,
We had the big like Nate Gilman, I think it was Nate Gilman, wrote a really good article a few years ago
yeah.
showing PPDA by month and basically just showing like for most of the league in the summer they can't press anymore and for the for the Texas teams or teams playing in Texas it's just like nah, no thank you. So I
I
get it.
Going to the reverse of that is like some of the winter games, and especially like up here, you have, October and November soccer games, which can be in sleet, right? In Colorado, legitimately you have snowstorms, but just like up in here, Kevin Minkus came up for I think it was a playoff game against LA Galaxy, and it was pouring. It was absolutely pouring. It was all of maybe like 35, 38 degrees. So like, 2, 3 degrees Celsius. It was cold. It was just it just kind of hurt your bones. But dude, when they would score, and the Sounders, they have like these areas where they just do flames when they score. Like that's what you're cheering. You're not cheering just for them to score goals. You're cheering because you're about to get warm. My wife was so elated. Like my wife is not a diehard soccer fan, but dude, she got so excited for warmth. Like that, like her getting excited for that. It was fun. It incentivized everything. So it works both ways. It definitely does. It can make for a very unpleasant experience.
Oh, I bet Ben and I, our teams dueled the coldest games ever played, and
Yep.
it was like I think the game in Colorado was like minus 25 Celsius. Like it was outrageous. Like I remember Agar Ketche. They played the first leg in Toronto. I think they played the first leg in Toronto. I can't
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
And he played the first leg, and it was freezing. And I asked him, I was like, "Oh, like this is the coldest you've ever played in?" And he's like, "This is awful. How do people do this?" And I was like, "You're playing in Colorado. It's going to be worse next week." And he was like, "What do you mean? It gets colder than this?" And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, I think the
yeah,
beer lines were freezing that game or something.
yeah, the taps
Yep.
froze. It was a whole thing. Armand, do you like the schedule change? Are you a fan?
I I do, and like I'm kind of like again like with the transfer like windows lining up. I think it's a really big deal from like understanding like again like how everything like works and talking to people. I think it's a lot bigger deal, a lot MLS to compete in that market a lot better, I'd probably say. And like the one thing that again like I'm kind of watching for is I've been kind of reading a lot about Japan's proposed switch. They're proposing their calendar switch. And again, Japan, USA are not Canada aren't the same, obviously. Like there's much differences, but they have like specific plans to where it's like they detail plans. I can't remember the guy. There's a guy on Twitter. He's big into Japanese football. He tweeted the thread in English, and it was fantastic. And he basically broke down like they estimated the windfall that would get financially, and they basically figured out like this gap to where they would have to play some of the games in the snowy regions would have to go obviously in the warmer regions, and there was a plan for it. So I'm confident that like there's a plan. I think you can plan around it. It's obviously not going to be ideal for everybody, right? I think there's going to be some moments where it sucks for one group, it's going to suck for another group, whatever. But overall, I think it's going to be a positive because I mean, look, I hate that we don't like see the international breaks. I hate that we play through them sometimes, and sometimes you kind of have to, right? And I think this kind of makes things a lot easier. Um, but again, I totally understand like the fan point where it's like, hey, it's cold outside, like it's really cold outside. I hate the cold. I cannot stand it. So like, it's 100% probably not enjoyable at all. But I think it's gonna be a thing that the league is definitely just gonna do, and especially it makes sense like with the World Cup coming up, it makes too much sense. If like
Mhm.
if they time it in that way, and then you have this like weird MLS is back to tournament, I guess,
Yeah,
like as a
that's that
stopgap
that
or something,
that is the
like
rumor.
like I don't know, like for
I
me,
think I think
like
you have to though. Like I think
Yeah.
of the available solutions, which is you play one very long season to make it work, or you play a short 20 game season. I think it'll be a stupid thing, but everybody will just be like, all right, whatever, and move along. I think is what will happen, but I don't know. We'll see. There's enough room still that they can fix it. And it sounds like the college schedule is going to change too, which is kind of weird to match it, but I think makes sense. The other big one that happened was the internal cash transfer market. Ben and I heard last week that Matt Pfeffer, and speaking as himself, not as the Colorado Rapids, thought that maybe it was disadvantageous to teams that generate a GAM surplus. Pro or against internal cash transfer market?
I mean, again, I'm all for autonomy of like how you can build a roster. Like, I think it's like super key. I don't know if it's gonna get as much usage as people think it is. I
This
think
is
people are overrating it quite a bit as like it's a league changer, whatever. I think it's going to move the bigger pieces. Like if Evander moves, right? Like the bigger pieces, I don't because of the way it's structured, right? It still hits against the budget charge. Like with the fee still hits against the budget charge. So you can't spend like 5 million on like
it's
a
it's
player.
it's anyone who is going to go into a roster designation. So a DP and a
On
U22,
those
and
prime
that's
roster
it.
spots. Exactly. Exactly. Like I think it's good. It's needed. I don't know if it's gonna get as much usage as people want it to be.
Yeah, I think we need like a good one to happen. Like we hypothesized that maybe the Jesus Ferreira one was going to be the first one of it, and it was not. It ended up being a trade. But yeah, it is interesting. But I do think when it does happen, it will be quite poppy. That is for sure. Harrison, did you? I don't think we had spoken about this
No,
earlier.
and I think I kind of wish that it was something that was in place a few years ago. I mean, you look at LAFC and like them trying to move like Chicho Arango, like that just makes a lot of sense.
That's
That would have.
exactly the one.
I
Yeah.
mean, I agree with Armin. It's like it's not going to be like super used, but you're definitely going to see some DPS that are probably in that 3 to 4, 5 mil range shift hands because it's there are clubs that would much rather. Do that than have to deal with the Mexican teams like in a year from now and have to pay more. And realistically, in some cases, have to pay more. You kind of wonder whether or not Austin would have ponied up a little bit more than like um, I, where did Vasquez? I feel like it was Tigres.
Brennan,
Monterrey.
Monterrey.
Monterrey, I'm sorry, but I mean it's the same idea, right? Like there's some players that might just absolutely stay in MLS because they're DP caliber players rather than go to Liga MX, and that's I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. I think it actually makes it more competitive in some rights. I think that they're actually going to be probably the Liga MX teams are probably going to be the most impacted by this rather than some of the smaller market teams.
I hadn't thought about this when we talked about this last week, Ben, but it just crossed my mind. Like the perfect example is like, do you remember when the Galaxy played chicken with the roster rules with
With Gio Dos
Giovanni Dos
Santos.
Santos,
Yep.
where they were just like, yeah, we're gonna trade him. We're gonna trade him, and maybe and people were like, MLS are gonna add a fourth DP so they don't
Yeah.
have to waive him, and they just like got up to the deadline, and then they cut him.
Yeah, they just ate the
And I don't
contract.
even remember what he did. I think he went to Liga MX or something.
Yeah,
But
he waited like half a year and then like signed with Club America or something.
yeah, but that's like a perfect one where like actually you think about it now, and like they would have just sold him for a cut price deal to someone else in
Who would
MLS to
have
avoid having to cut him.
see the thing is like his stock was like an absolute low at that point. So
Yeah, but
I don't
his
You
even
would
know
have
like
what the
so you would
fee
have
would
thought
have
for
been.
sure Colorado would have thrown money at it.
no, but now it's like
Well,
the Chicago Fire or something would
hmm
have been would have
but
been in
yeah,
there.
He's
but
not from
that
Seattle.
No, fair. Okay. We're gonna play a game. We're gonna finish off with a game. We played this game with Nikos. Uh I have five transactions for you, all three of you gentlemen, and I want you to rate them. Ben, I'm gonna exempt you from the first one because we already talked about this. But Armand, I want you to go off because you and I had like many evenings of conversations about this transaction. We're gonna loop the whole deal together as one mega deal. Jesus Ferreira goes to Seattle for Leo Chu, a bunch of money staged over 3 years. I think some international spots. And Paul Areola goes for like pocket change they found behind their couch. What do you think of that deal overall?
I think it's a masterful job by Seattle. I mean, I think it's an absolute like great job. Harrison's flexing in the for those who can't see, which is everyone listening to this. But I think Seattle did a masterful job of taking advantage of a distressed asset almost. Like again, Jesus Ferreira, I mean, he hasn't been at his best form, right? But again, what it's Seattle just sold off a bunch of international spots to basically make up that money. Like if you think about like they basically didn't spend that much to get him.
That's what they said in Soccer Wise in the episode today was that they got the Areola trade and like half or maybe just this year's portion of the Jesus Ferreira trade exclusively from selling off international spots.
Exactly, and that's what and that's the thing. Like they did, it's a great job by Weibel and team to just be like, hey, like we're gonna plan our roster the proper way. We're gonna sell off these spots. I think it was like 750K in allocation money that they received from selling all those spots off. And again, you get a guy like Paul Arriola who, look, they're getting on a reduced budget charge. The whole issue with Paul Arriola was that he was on $1.7 million. That is the whole issue with Paul Arriola. It's not with his production wasn't matching the contract, like for lack of a better word, to get him at that price, which is now reduced to I think it's like near or below that max budget
It is
charge.
below
The max budget charge.
allegedly.
Yeah, so you get that, and then you get Jesus Ferreira on a TAM deal for the first couple of years. Like again, like you can if you sell Jesus Ferreira, you can recoup some of that money for allocation money because he's not a full DP. Like those kind of things like and Jesus at his peak was we're not at his peak like a couple years ago
So
was really good and fluid.
do you have any Jesus stories? Was he like a guy that you could talk about data with when you were there?
Not really. No, no, no.
Interesting.
It's there like Jesus went through a really like rough patch. Like not I wouldn't say a rough patch, but from the end of like the middle from Gold Cup 23 to the end of the season, it was just a really rough patch for him that like but we didn't really talk as much data with him. And to be honest, I let the coaches to do that because they know them way better than me coming in part
Mhm.
time, right? Like they know their mannerisms, they know how to explain it better. So no crazy Jesus stories, but I know he's super talented, and in the right environment, he works like super hard. And I think he's a kid on the way. His advanced metrics, like you look before, like and Dallas had a really rough year last year offensively for the first part of the year under Nico. It was not like the great. I think they were averaging like an XG below one, like a non-penalty XG below
Oh
one at
wow.
one point. It was like really bad. Like so, it's hard to blame him. They were out Allen and Musa was acclimating to the league, etc. So I think they got him on a bargain, guys, and they get Ariola, who again is below the TAM level. He's a great. Their locker room with Seattle is gonna be excellent. Like their mentality should be absolutely fantastic. That's
Their
made not the
press is I don't think I haven't heard anyone talk about this. Their press is going to be ridiculous.
Yep.
With if you think about like I think Pedro de la Vega honks, not a good player, but he does try very, very, very hard. And like you have between Jesus and Jordan Morris and De La Vega and Georgia Monongu and Paul Rothrock and Paul Areola, like you just have dudes who can
They're
run,
deep. They're so
run.
deep.
Harrison, where you at? You love this deal? I bet you love this deal.
Oh, dude, I was so elated, and here's why. Like, I like some of the different players out there. You think about Chicho Arango, who went in this window as well, and people asking, I think it was Jamin Moore, who would you want? When you start, breaking it down, who are the strikers? All three of those being open, who would you really want there? And I kind of looked at it from a Seattle perspective. I think they got the perfect guy for them. Yeah, you guys nailed the press situation, but like let's detach the press. Let's just talk about the attack. He's so good with the ball at his feet, and he's so good in possession, and he does so good with just positional awareness. That is like 90% of what Seattle needs in a forward attacker. Like you think about like what they needed to help create opportunities throughout this entire season. They needed somebody, and I love Jordan Morris. I differ with a lot of different people on where he fits fundamentally and functionally within that roster, but without a doubt, we can all agree that he's just not a possession type attacker. And even in that, they still were really, really dangerous at times. You put Ferreira up top with Morris, who can work off of each other, who have different skill sets that are interchangeable, that are not interchangeable, but they work really well with each other. The fact that Ferreira is a great passer Yeah. I'm over the moon. Ariola, I will tell you right now, I'm a little I feel like he's going to provide a different pace on the flanks, and I think that's where depth, like Armand said, is going to be huge. Especially, I think the Sounders have like 54 games, 58 games this season. They have a lot of games this season, a lot of games, and so. Um, Maybe less now that they're not in Open Cup. I think with Open Cup, I think we were kind of inflating it a little bit. So it's probably like closer to 48 or 50. But still, that's a lot of games to play for an MLS team. And so they're going to need that depth. And that's just great to have. But I do kind of wonder what Ariel is going to function as because you do have Alex Roldan there on the right
So
side. So it'll be very interesting.
if you want my like real sicko thing, I was
Let's
thinking
go.
about
Let's
because
go. I'm
I've been
ready
going
for it.
I've been going through the like rosters for the previews because I think I'm gonna have to pick up a fair few previews this year. Not Seattle, but just going through. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, I bet you he's gonna play some decent right back minutes, and they're gonna go like Nuhu left back to flex into a three, push Ariola really really high, and then have De La Vega come in as like a second 10. I think that's gonna happen a lot because I think it actually is like a very natural shape for their roster. And if you play Roldan as one of the pivots, he's mobile enough that like he can get out to cover if Ariel is high for transition defending. Like I think it's actually a very natural fit that way in a way that if he just plays as a regular winger, it's he's good, he's fine there, but it's maybe not the best way to use them.
Well,
But I'm
and I
gonna
think
drop
that would
that
make
bomb
a
on you.
lot of sense, like especially if you had like Reed Baker Whiting out there on the left side as well, who
Sure.
they want to get more minutes for, who's going to be
Sure.
more healthier this year, hopefully. And so that would be fantastic. So yeah, there's some stuff that we could go further down the sicko route, but yeah.
I am sure we're gonna be talking plenty of Seattle this year. Ben, next deal up, Mateus Bogus out from LAFC, big fee, $10 million. I saw somebody tweeted, I can't recall who tweeted this, so my apologies if they're a listener. But this is something like the 10th sale above $10 million from MLS this year, which is pretty wild. Uh, Ben, what do you think? Bogus out from LAFC.
think this is a more positive thing for the league than it is for LAFC necessarily. And I think I'll be doing the LAFC preview, so I'm gonna have to go through their roster again. But like, I remember doing the preview last year and being like, I don't know how Bogusz fits into this team. He doesn't he doesn't feel like the best at his best position anymore. And then I don't know how he slots in. So they didn't sign Carlos Vega. They didn't sign a striker, so they just put him at striker, and he was amazing. Like he was amazing. He was incredible at every single position he played. He can play wide, he can play striker, he can play central midfield. He's incredibly talented and flexible, and they're selling him for $10 million. And I don't know how easy it's going to be to replace a player of that level. And he's not going to Europe, he's going to Mexico. He's going to Cruz Azul, where I imagine he's getting a big payday. But I'm just like, I don't know what this does for the club in terms of a big, like, we want to move players to Europe so we keep getting the best of the recruits. Because I remember that was part of the LAFC vision right at the beginning. That's why they signed, you know, Horta and
Oh yeah, Horta.
who's
Holy,
playing well,
that's
and
a tall
Brian
recruit.
Rodriguez, who's playing for Club America now. Like it's
Yeah.
like the this
Well,
like so
and Diego Rossi, right?
and yeah, that's it, Diego Rossi.
Yeah.
Yep. So I think that, and he's now in Columbus. So like they've obviously identified immensely talented players, but
Well,
that
well,
vision
well,
hasn't
well,
panned out. And I don't
well,
know. Well, they
they the
meaning
same
Will
they
Kuntz,
anymore?
who's now exactly. So historically they were able to. Is that going to continue? I don't know. And so that's where I'm just left with. I'm left with, wow, that was an important player for LAFC who already had some question marks about major pieces fitting in their team. So I'm a little hesitant that this is such a great thing for the team, but it certainly shows that the league is being well regarded in terms of the talent we have. Like if you're an amazing MLS player, major teams in Latin America, in Brazil, in Argentina, and in Mexico are confident that you're going to be great for their team too.
Yeah, it's a good to me, it's a good sell high on a player who had a hot finishing season. But then you think about it, it's like even if you bank all 3 million now, which obviously you would because of your roster constraints, like can you get even his underlying production back for his roster slot and use the 3 million to do other things? That's an interesting question to me. Armand, love this deal, hate this deal, like this deal.
So I like it, and it's interesting because Martin Anselmi, who the guy who wanted to bring in Bogus from Cruz Azul, he's going to be Porto's coach now. Like
Oh wow.
I'm not exactly sure how this is going to work out. I think there was a little bit of worry that the deal might snag because he was leaving. He's going to Porto to be their coach. So I hope Bogus can fit in. I mean, Cruz Azul right now, it's only been 2 games in the Liga MX season. They sit at the bottom of the table, and they had their best year last year under Anselmi. So I wonder how they're going to replace a coach when they had arguably the best Liga MX, one of the best Liga MX seasons in history. For LAFC, I'm really interested to see because I saw glimpses of David Martinez quite a bit, and I'm interested to see how because I think naturally I think you're going to see him kind of slot into that winger role. You have Boanga, you have I guess it's going to be Giroud, I guess it's going to be him in the middle, and now you're going to have whatever allocation money now to spend, you can convert the 3 million, 2 million, whatever, into that. I think it's gonna be interesting to see how LAFC kind of retool that because now they have a lot of money. Now they have a lot of money to spend, and I know GAM has no expiration date now, so they can
Yep.
like bank it, go whatever, do whatever they need to do.
That's such
But
a no-brainer, by the way.
yeah, yeah,
Absolute like home run, zero negative consequences as a
absolutely
rule change.
is a fantastic shout out MLS and Don Garber maybe I don't know. Uh, but I think for LAFC, this gives them again like a little bit more ammo to kind of build across the roster. I mean, I don't know if we're gonna touch upon this move, but the Nkosi Tafari move I thought was great. I thought the move to get Delgado was also pretty good as well
We
too,
are
because
gonna,
now you
that is
have the money to
that's
do
the
that. So
perfect segue. We're gonna talk
spoiler,
about that one. Do you like
yes,
that deal as well?
I like that deal as well because again they got Delgado. Like, are we talking about Delgado specifically?
Yep. Yep.
I think with Delgado, they have the space now, right? Like they again like have the money. I think they had the space going into it, but they give up what 500,000 allocation money to do that. Picking a guy up that knows the league very well, can fit in the middle of the park. I think the Galaxy didn't want to let him go. They had to let him go, like because of the way the roster is constructed. Mainly through Joveljic coming off the U22 deal. Now that he's actually taken on the full hit of what his budget charge is.
Hmm.
So I think for LAFC, it's like a no-brainer of a deal to pick up Mark Delgado. And again, you get a guy as a seasoned vet who's played for all three LA teams, which is a weird trivia question, I guess. Chivas, LAFC,
Yes. Yeah.
Galaxy.
That is correct.
And I like him as a ball progressor. I think they're gonna miss him in the Galaxy, especially without Pooch I mean, I want to say for virtually the entire year, if not a massive chunk of the year. I think those moves from LAFC are like very smart and very well, like they're up there, like in my opinion, kind of propelling and up the ranks. But I'm interested to see how David Martinez develops. They paid a decent chunk for him. I saw him play when Dallas played LAFC, and LAFC completely rotated their team. I think they had an Open Cup. The final was the next week, and David Martinez was electric in moments. He was super fun, and he's super young. He's like 18, 19, something like that. So I'm interested to see how now he's had one full year at LAFC. How is he going to fit into that role? And I mean, I like it for LFC, and I think it gives them again. I keep saying flexibility; it's like the word on the top of my tongue, but like it gives them just more ammo to do more things with more money.
I think on the Delgado deal, Harrison, before I get your thoughts, I think if you think about this as connected with letting Elia Sanchez walk, turning Elia Sanchez into Delgado, who is making like a little bit more than half of what he was,
Yep.
you're basically just like getting Elie again, right? Because they got him when he was 30. Now he's 34. I think Mark Delgado's 29 now. Like you're getting Elie again. Like, and I think he's probably a little bit better than Elie is, if I'm being perfectly honest. So like I love that deal. It sucks for the Galaxy that they had to do it. I think they probably could have gotten away without doing it. Um, but we'll see. I think that's an interesting one. Harrison, you like the marquee trade?
For LAFC for sure. I think you
Correct.
nailed it. I think you nailed it on the head, right? LAFC just absolutely I, man, they again distressed asset, but in a different way. I love that term. That was brilliant. Thank you. I'm gonna steal it and put it in my pocket. No, absolutely. Like it seemed like the Galaxy were going to kind of have to make some moves. I agree. I feel like within their budget, they could have gotten around it. I feel like they took the easy way out, which is maybe a little unfair, but at the same time, I felt like Delgado was so critical to what they did in the playoffs, and I felt like this was going to be a huge season for him. Um, Man, Pooch is just without Pooch, they're fundamentally going to have to change. This season's going to be an outlier because they won't have him. I actually will go ahead. I don't know if he'll be ready for next season to start. That's a huge question. I
No,
think
he is
it
like confirmed out until like August.
well until August. I think it'll be longer.
I
I
mean,
think.
if you think
Yeah.
about like
Oh,
Alan
you think he'll be
Velasco,
out the whole season?
I
Oh, I do. I do. I don't. I question whether or not they'll bring him back for the playoffs.
and I
And
think to your point, Harrison, Alan Velasco when he tore his ACL in the first round
yep.
of the playoffs and was coming back in like August, September-ish. Your guy having a guy that tore his ACL in
Yeah,
MLS
like
Cup.
3 weeks later.
Yeah, like more like a
Yeah,
month
more,
later.
6 weeks
Yeah,
later
more like on because of
almost.
the big gap that they have. So
Yeah.
I think Harrison's a
Oh.
chance that they might. I don't know if they'll do it, but there has to be a real conversation if you throw him on SEI
Yeah.
and
Oh, and
Agreed.
use the slot.
use and see if you can
Oh,
open
that
up the
would be
spot and maybe go 2+4 or maybe up Joveljic to a DP spot to open up the
Well,
space.
exactly. That's exactly where I was going to go with it. Was the Jovovich? I think you could have made him a DP for a season and not worried
so.
about it. Like that
I
would have been
wonder.
sick. And then you get to buy. You don't have to. It definitely calls into question. LA Galaxy have some really interesting dudes in their front office, and so I again I want to say that it's a little unfair. But I think with the information that we have, I think it's fair to at least be a little bit hard on some of these teams and question and say, okay, I don't see it right now. Maybe
I
it changes, maybe that changes, but yeah, that's where I'm at.
I wonder if you could put Pooj on season-ending injury, sign a DP into his slot, but with a heavily front-loaded contract. So like you're gonna pay them 5 million over 5 years, but you're gonna pay them 3 million now.
the Atlanta United method.
Yeah, like you're gonna front load it, or so, like I wonder because we've seen this before. Like the Bale was the reverse, right? Where it's a backloaded. Same with Ibra, it's a backloaded contract, and they're TAM in the first year to make them fit, and then they're DP later. I wonder if you could pull some shenanigans there, but also like your LA, you could. Nico's talked about how gross the advantages that those markets have. Like you could get an unbelievable 1 year loan. Like you could call up Chelsea and be like, "Hey, who's not playing? You want to send us like." You want to give us like Carney Chukwuemeka on loan? That'd be cool. All right, moving on. Next one, Ben. Uh, Miguel Almiron back to Atlanta United. $10 million. Presumably starts as the right winger. Love, hate. There's only one answer here, I think.
I love it. How could you not
Yeah,
love it? It's
he's
gonna
so
be the
good.
vibes, even if he's not as good as he was last
No,
time
he's
around.
better. He's better. He
You think he's
became
better? I
like
mean,
a
I'm not
legitimately
even.
good Premier League winger.
So yeah, I mean, he's gonna be great, and that's at a great price to get him at, and the vibes are gonna be immaculate from the start. Yeah, yeah, what's not to like?
Armand over under 25 goals plus assists.
Oof.
It's a high line. That's a
That's a
high
high
line.
line. I would probably go maybe like 21.5 or something like that, like as like a line
Interesting.
or something.
You'll
I
take the
mean,
under.
Atlanta is gonna have 7 DPs if you think or potential DPs if you think about it,
Wait.
right? Like because
Yeah.
Cleach is a DP technically on DC United's roster. You
Yeah.
have the three. You have then you have the TAM level players, which we could call them pretty much DPs with how they're spending
Sure.
Schleich,
Lobojivice.
Greg, exactly, Schleich, Saba, and Gregerson. So like they're gonna have like the way that the roster build's been there has been absolutely excellent from and again I always plug this like this one pod. Jason Longshore sat down with Demetrius. I have no idea how to say his last name, but I have respect for you. And Garth Lagerwey, and he broke down how they got to this point essentially. But before obviously it's like back in the summer and how they're gonna maneuver through it. It's a very interesting podcast. Highly recommend to our listeners listen to it. But I love Al Marone going there. I love it. It's so much fun. And this is gonna sound kind of corny to say, but I really like in 2018 we watched Atlanta United like with a full Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Their fun football with Martino, etc. It made me like it was one like the times. Obviously, I was big in MLS, but I was like, damn man, this is just so much fun to watch. This is a joy with Joseph, with Hector Villalba, which I saw his name recently somewhere playing for a team, with like all these guys. It's just so much like it's just so much fun. And like again, he's had time in the Premier League to grow. He's like you said, like Kieran, like you said, he's better than what he was.
He
Like
is so he is
it's gonna
he
be
came
so
to the
great, man.
he came to the Premier League and was like actively not a good player. And last year he had a pretty hot finishing season, but was like actively a very useful Premier League winger. And I think as far as MLS has come, like the level of like useful Premier League player is like still tremendously high in MLS,
And he's a
especially
known
for that league.
commodity. He's a known
Mhm.
commodity. He's comfortable with the environment, you know, like
Yeah,
you
very
maybe
little risk.
yeah, it's not like you don't know who the hell the guy is or anything. He's lived in Atlanta, you know, like I love it, man. I absolutely love it.
You like it, Harrison?
I'm taking the over, by the way.
On
I'm
25?
100% taking the over. I wanted Charlotte to swoop in there so badly. Like, can I like
No,
I
no. Charlotte
dude,
don't deserve
I
nice
wanted
things.
it. I felt like the villain vibes. Like, let's do this. Like, this is gonna feel so great to
It would have been
watch a
tremendous
Charlotte.
content.
It would have been tremendous. Yes,
Uh,
yes, exactly.
Atlanta are like trying to get Emmanuel Latte Loth, who
Mhm.
plays for Middlesbrough and scores a million goals. There was a rumor today that they put a bid in for Arthur Cabral, who plays for Benfica, um, who like destroyed the Swiss league for XG a few years ago, and then like bounced around some decent leagues and like didn't play very much in Italy. But they're shopping in a different market to everybody else. Like having that much money to spend, there's a chance that they're stupid good this year, which is pretty fun.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
I think there's better than a chance at this stage.
We might get our Seattle Atlanta MLS Cup final next
Listen,
season.
I'm gonna just say this. Atlanta hiring Garth Lagway and then hiring Chris Henderson, while Inter Miami reassign, bunny ears, reassign their sporting director so Messi's homeboy can be the sporting director is like
Godfather.
if Miami are bad this year, which like if by the way, if somebody can find me a bookie that I can bet against Miami to make the playoffs, I'll do it. Because it would be I don't think they'll miss the playoffs, but I think like you'd get really good odds on it. That it's more likely than the odds would the bookies would think it is. Just because like they're insane. If Messi gets hurt, they won't make the playoffs. But that happening is just genuinely hysterical to me. Anyways, we're gonna move on. The last deal, we're gonna clear the paint. Armand, you're going into the post. Jose Kojima to DC United. You talked about the use of supplemental roster spots and why this was so cool. Talk about this deal.
Yeah, and like again, supplemental roster spots. I think they're so important, and like we kind of forget about it, right? Like, uh, I also think like very random. Sorry, I was just thinking about this. I know we're not. It's not about Kojima, but would Randall Leal count as a supplemental roster player for DC because they
The
got him on like the minimum like
so
salary budget charge?
I think they could. My guess is they wouldn't. I was thinking
Right.
about this with DC because what's his name? Stephen Goff tweeted today that they have Brendan Servani on trial, and
Yep.
he expects that he's going to sign a 2 year deal that is vet minimum 1 year and then a significant escalator in the second year. He was making 900K last year. And I was like, oh, that's a really interesting one because Brandon Servania is really good. I wonder if they could hide him in the supplemental spots.
Supplemental roster. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. So I love it because they look. It was a kind of the same thing like when Columbus acquired AZ Jackson. Like he was a supplemental roster player due to his homegrown status. Uh, again, you get a player like Kojima who's very versatile. Is one thing because I actually did like some of his like I guess college scouting. like when we're preparing for the draft. And one thing you know is he's like very versatile. He can play outside back. He can play center mid. He presses quite a bit, which is exactly what DC United's trying to do under Troy Lesesne. To get him on a deal
Yeah.
that's gonna be a bit, I guess, longer. Those rookie deals are all honestly like pretty long, right? Like they have a lot of option years as well too. I mean, Dallas with Logan Farrington, right? You get a guy like Farrington, he's under cap control deal for basically 2 to 3 years before I think he signed a new deal, and after that new deal, I think would push him over the supplemental hump. So I like it a lot. Again, you got to get players that can perform and that don't count against the cap. Like you have players that are homegrowns, you have like that do that. But for a team that's brand new, like St. Louis, or teams that are in, I know. I'm blanking on his name. Fran always talked about in a Fran, the sporting director of Colorado, talked about how they
Right,
have to
Taylor.
draft. Yep, how they have to draft quite a bit because of the kind of the talent that the talent area that they're in isn't as great. To kind of build those areas, I think it's great for like a team like DC. I know I said St. Louis, but I mixed them up. But it's great for a team like DC that's trying to like properly build. And when I was talking about like kind of those roster building things, you're kind of seeing that in DC, right? Like you're seeing like a clear like kind of roster build where okay, they're gonna have to eat Cleach on a DP deal like for the rest of the year, but like there is a clear idea of okay, like we're gonna build for like the future, and maybe like this year isn't gonna be our year, right? Like
It's the click deal or cliche. I don't know how to say his name. Polls are hard. His deal, I think, is like actually a bit of a strategic misstep to have to eat that because they have to eat it because they use their buyouts on
on Birnbaum,
Birnbaum
yeah, that was hilarious when
and the
everyone was just trying to
Iranian
figure out.
fullback.
Everyone's trying to figure out what the hell was going on. They were
Yeah,
like, "Why did this deal happen?" And then it was like,
yeah,
"Oh,
which is hilarious. So what's funny actually is Bay FC in NWSL did basically the same thing as DC United, but did it the smart way. So like DC United used their Birnbaum buyout uh on they used their buyout on Birnbaum, who was going to retire anyways, but was like, if you don't buy me out, I'm just going to stay on the roster. And they bought out the fullback who was like Scandinavian Iranian. I can't remember his name, um, but they bought out the fullback as well. But what Bay FC did was they waited until the very end of the season and then used their 2024 buyout on a retiring player who was like making good money. And then they bought out another player making good money they didn't want anymore for their 2025 buyout immediately once the dates transitioned over. And now they have like tremendous roster flexibility to go do all these things, which is not shocking because we know ASA alumni Ariel Dror is helping run that team. Uh, Ben, did we talk about this one in Nikos's one? I think I brought this up in that one. Did you like that deal, the Jose Kojima one?
Yeah, I think we did. I think it's
Was
okay. I don't know much about
he
Kojima's game, but I think the
I
fact that it's supplemental ups it a lot.
yeah, he's a very analytically inclined guy. He's been working with an analyst I know, so I've been sending him his G plus wheels, which is fun. So he cares about his wheels, which is interesting. And his next pro wheels are cracked. He's like one of those guys that goes down and is like clearly way too good for the level, which is always a good sign. Anyways, we're gonna wrap up here because like we've nearly done a 2 hour marathon pod, so this will be one for
damn."
the sickos. Um, Armand, before we let you go, anything? Oh, Harrison's got a hand up. What do you want?
I got one more. Armand,
Shoot.
our boy, your boy is returning to MLS. Maxi Urruti going to New England. I want 30 seconds. I want 30 seconds of your thoughts.
Maxi or Rudy could never stay up as a forward. It was the funniest thing because Oscar would always bitch to me, being like, "We need a guy that stays up top." He doesn't. He would drift deep, goes here, go there. He would just go on his own, and you're like, "What the hell is this guy doing?" But he also scored goals to win U.S. Open Cup, which is the last trophy FC Dallas ever won. So it was like it was a key part of that team. But we could not like, or not we, but they could not keep him up top. They literally couldn't because he would just drift. You just go deep into a pocket, and if you watch his like heat maps, you're like you're supposed to be a forward. It looked like he's like the center mid, like how far he would drop and stuff like
He's
that. It
just
was
a
just
false nine.
incredible. false nine slash false 10, false seven, false whatever. Dude, he was a mess. I mean, I guess it's on a vet minimum deal. I don't know. Like, Caleb
My
let Caleb Porter cook, I guess.
my favorite Maxi Urruti thing is that TFC were like in their infancy as a club and did like a ton of work to bring him to MLS. And he was in Toronto for legitimately 2 weeks and was like, I want out. No. And they traded him to Portland after he literally played 2 games. He lived in Canada for 3 weeks and they traded him to Portland for bright DK and money. Yeah, it was like it was a whole thing. And then I think they used his spot to get Mati Laba, who ended up at the Whitecaps, which is a real MLS remember those guys.
Wow, that was like
Uh,
you just threw two
Deep
names.
cut. That was a deep cut, man.
it
Holy hell.
was. It
Right,
Bright
was.
DK? I
DK.
played him like FIFA 13 as a bronze player or something like that.
So that season was the season I started. That was the fall I started college, and I took the train to Toronto to go see every game that summer. So I was like super plugged in that year, and we were awful, awful. I think it was the year before Defoe came.
I was just about to say, I think
Yeah,
wasn't that Cooverman's
that
right
was
before
Yeah, that
Defoe?
was when we were the worst team in the world. It
Yeah,
was it was definitely a thing.
the
yeah.
worst too. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, we're gonna wrap up here. Armand, where's the best place to find your stuff? You're writing at Backheeled a lot. Or you got
Yeah,
a Substack,
just follow me on Blue Sky or something. I'll throw a
and you'll
link on
post
there,
everything.
whatever. Yeah, like I'll post whatever. And I like Blue Sky. I actually get a lot more interaction on Blue Sky than I ever did on X, which is
Yeah,
like
I
I
agree.
guess the sickos are all on there. So it's super fun. I love interacting. And if you guys like, if anyone has any questions, like again, don't be afraid to shoot a message, and don't be afraid to shoot a message to any of us, I guess. Like, not to
Yes,
speak on y'all's behalf, but I mean, I know you're all
Cosign.
so willing. Don't be afraid, and if you want to learn more and grow, don't be afraid to ask questions. And I guess the final thing is, if you're at ASI and you see me, because I'll be there, shoot me, come grab me. I might look a little different because I won't have the full facial hair and I'll get a haircut.
they can't see
But
you right now. They have no idea what you look
oh
like.
damn, man, I that was that was kind of head ass. So. Come find me. You whatever, man. Come find me. If you see me,
Find
come
the
say hi.
find
Don't
the
be afraid.
find the ethnically ambiguous guy with clear glasses frames, and you'll find him. You'll know the real ones know. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up there. Again, if you want to support the show, if you want to support the site, check out the Patreon. Uh, Season preview time is coming. I was looking at my calendar today and looking at the dates they all come out, and they start the day after the Super Bowl. That's the first three. We're starting with San Diego, which I am writing, which will be fun. So if you want to support the site and all that stuff, check out the Patreon. There's one tier; it's $5 a month. It goes a long way. And keep your eyes peeled for a special ASA announcement that I'm hoping is going to come out this week before ASI, but it's out of my hands, so we'll see. Anyways, we'll wrap it all there. As always, my friends, Armand, thanks for coming on. Enjoy the soccer.